talk about for Valentine's Day, but here we are. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets today?
We do have regrets from Mayor Burton.
So for those of you, Mayor Burton is going to be representing the town at Mayor McCallion's funeral, and we send all our thoughts to her family, and thank you for her service. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no consent items, and there are no confidential consent items, so we're off to the meat of the meeting, which is to hear delegations. We have 2 registered delegations that will start us off. The first is Ron McKee. Mr. McKee, we look forward to hearing from you. You can step to the podium and staff will guide you.
Thank you very much. Hello, I am an Oakville resident and a retired environmental engineer who is deeply concerned by the effects of climate change. I am here today to express a concern that the proposed 2023 budget appears to be inadequate with respect to dealing with the climate emergency that was declared by the town almost 4 years ago, and with respect to helping our federal government reach its important carbon reduction goals. But first, I would like to acknowledge and commend the town for its actions to reduce its corporate carbon footprint. You have energy-efficient buildings and electric buses. You are nicely tracking your corporate greenhouse gas emissions. Last April, you reported that the corporation was on track to easily meet its interim target for 2030, and you commendably went on to establish a target of net zero by 2050. Emissions by the town corporation, however, represent only about 1.5% of all the emissions for our community. I understand you have a plan to reduce the remaining 98.5% of our emissions. It's the community energy strategy. And one of its fundamental goals is to reduce our emissions by at least 50% by 2041. So, when last week I asked the Budget Committee about the 2023 budget items that are going toward reducing emissions for our community as a whole, I was very pleased to receive a prompt reply, but very disappointed to learn of the very low and very slow funding going toward the community energy strategy. First, tree planting, bike lanes, and electric vehicle charging stations are all commendable, but represent a drop in the bucket toward our emission goals. The town's consultants have shown that 2/3 of our emissions come from buildings and industry, and 1/3 from the transportation sector. The low-hanging fruit is to decarbonize the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in all our buildings. To that end, I understand that the town established Future Energy Oakville and a separate relationship with Oakville Enterprises Corporation. These ventures are principally to encourage the use of low-emission HVAC units in new buildings and the retrofitting of HVAC units in existing buildings. The town has also made plans to encourage the development of district energy systems in certain neighborhoods. Let me comment on each of these. FEO has a modest seed fund from the town, and it was designed to quickly go on to be self-funded. When I met with them last fall, they were essentially a one-man band operating under a volunteer board of directors. Expected funding from local industry had not materialized, and searches for new funding sources were just getting underway. FEO plans to initially focus on the retrofitting of existing homes. To meet the emissions target set by the community energy strategy, the FEO needs to complete the seemingly impossible task of retrofitting no less than 5,000 homes per year from late 2024 to 2041. The additional notion of tackling the commercial industrial sector and new builds seems to be a distant dream. Furthermore, last September, the town's consultant, Garforth International, predicted that the town would not meet its 2041 emission target. It wouldn't even come close. The OEC is also self-funded, and I have found no evidence that it has implemented any substantial low-carbon HVAC schemes. The district energy initiatives appear to be commendable, but nothing but planning has been undertaken, and only planning appears on the pages of the new budget. We urgently need investment and implementation. All other non-corporate items presented to me by the Budget Committee are commendable, but appear to be largely administrative or very modest in their approach, keeping informed, looking at things through a climate lens, and engaging the youth. The Canadian branch of Al Gore's Climate Reality Project has been collecting climate action data from municipalities across Canada on an annual basis. Its latest report, under the banner National Climate League, indicates that Oakville is near the bottom of the pack regarding the number of full-time equivalent staff dedicated to climate change. I understand that the 2021 budget allowed for 3.6 FTE staff in climate, yet page 173 of the proposed 2023 budget shows only 2.6 FTEs. So next year, we will score even lower. Many of the town's climate initiatives have been set back 2 years due to COVID, but scientists tell us that climate change continues virtually unabated, so we cannot push back our net zero deadlines. We have no choice but to invest more dollars and catch up. During the budget presentation last Wednesday evening, Councillor Haslett-Thiel asked, should we be putting something more into certain things? And to that I would answer enthusiastically, yes. Much more money should be put into reducing our community's greenhouse gas emissions. Funding should include a stimulus that would allow FEO to get cracking and get on schedule. There should be more town staff dedicated to climate action. And schemes should be implemented to incentivize residents, businesses, industries, and institutions to urgently and dramatically reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you for this opportunity to express my views.
Mr. McKee, thanks very much. Before I go to committee, I'm just going to ask staff if they could come forward and perhaps give us some more insight into the investment in the climate emergency and some of the work that's being done that's built into this budget. Director Clark, you have the podium.
Chair. Thank you for that presentation. It was quite informative, and I have made a few notes on that, and I would appreciate having a copy of your notes afterwards, so thank you. A few things I just wanted to point out. So we do have the community energy strategy. The town is one player in that strategy. And our home energy retrofit, if I can just speak to that for a moment, is guided by that strategy. So I think we all would hope that things would have moved faster. Some of the delay was pandemic related, but we are following the plan set out in the community energy strategy. So we did have our feasibility study that was presented last year in September to council. We are now working with OEC on the development of a business case, and that is going to set up how that program will function going forward. A key question that we need to determine is how it's going to be funded going forward long-term. We have the advantage of learning from many of the pilots that are out there right now. No pilot has gone seamlessly. There has been lots of lessons learned from that. One of the big ones is the ongoing funding for that. So the feasibility study, as you may recall, recommended a third-party entity be created. There's a fair amount of work to be done on that. And we are working with OEC currently on that, and we will be coming to council with a workshop on that. Just a few other points. We haven't had a reduction in staff, so I do find that interesting. So we need to look into that. We do have a core team in the Strategy, Policy, and Communications Department that focuses on climate. That staff complement has not changed. And I did want to remind of the embedded model that we use here. So the expectation is that while we have a core group that helps lead and direct, climate responsibilities are indeed embedded throughout the organization. So this is where it starts coming into everyday work, whether it's through our asset management, our rainwater strategy, our emergency response. So to your specific question in the budget about all the funding that's associated with that, I can speak to the funding for the home energy retrofit program is specific to that business case and working with OEC, Oakville Enterprise Corporation, and Future Energy Oakville on that. We are also actively working on district energy. The number would be from the environmental pillar, though. That's the goal that's in that budget. And that really combines all the efforts that we're spending towards the environment, broad environment, in this budget. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I did just want to remind of the embedded model that we have used here. But I do think we can agree we do need a home energy retrofit program. We want that, and we are actively working towards that.
CEO, closing.
I just wanted to add actually two things to the great summary that Julie has provided. First is OEC has been quite active in the climate change arena, I'll say. Quite a bit of their investment is moving into the geothermal or there's another name they use for it. But they have many projects actually that they've worked with private developers in order to move those projects into their developments, to incorporate them in. And many of the developers who actually sit on the, some of which sit on the FEO, are also very active in the geothermal. And that's the benefit of having that community energy plan where it pulls in all of the partners within the town in order to activate everybody in terms of developing a community response to climate action, which is really required. That would be my first point. The second point is I want to emphasize the embedding of climate action in all staff. We have in the past had a very successful environmental policy group who certainly got us started in lots of areas, particularly on our corporate energy plan, which the delegate spoke to, which has been quite successful in moving us forward. But I think lessons learned from that was that if you have one group of staff responsible solely for the delivery of climate action, you're not going to get much momentum behind that. And so we have, as a staff group, chosen an approach to actually have each department responsible for climate action. And you'll see that the urban mobility is one piece, the stormwater management or the rainwater strategy that the Infrastructure Commission is undertaking, the policy work that's happening in the Community Development Corporation, certainly in community services, the work that's on our own buildings ourselves in terms of the retrofit that we do. So we feel that that's a much stronger approach. So it may seem on the books that we only have 3.5 staff responsible for climate action. They pull us together in lots of ways so that we make sure we're targeting all those areas. But in reality, we have from a full-time staff complement of, I don't know, about 800 to 1,000 people working actually on climate change. And we feel that's a much stronger approach to delivering climate change to the community.
Thank you, CAO Closely. Thank you, Director Clark. I'm going to go to committee now. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, of the delegation, I'm just wondering if you can tell me where is the best municipality to look at for what they've done regarding climate change action?
Mr. McKee, it's okay to come back up to the podium. Thanks so much.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the start of that question.
Yeah, no worries. I was wondering, can you give me a community that you think is at the top of the list for action plans regarding climate change in Canada?
Well, the bigger cities, of course, Toronto and Vancouver have pretty good plans. And they have some independence from their provincial overlords to change things like building codes, which desperately need. I think Saskatoon and Calgary rate very, very high on the scale. And in Ontario, we know that cities like Guelph and Kingston have done very, very well. Whitby has a green building standard. And I realize you have immense problems implementing a coherent climate strategy and effectively with an obstructionist provincial government. But the bridge must exist between the federal government's goals and the people's goals and the municipality, and to get around these. And the council worked effectively to implement the zero boundary, the no sprawl, and I think we need pushback on that on many, many fronts. And I think a number of municipalities, such as Guelph and Kingston, have, Hamilton has a good program.
Now, you mentioned earlier, like 2/3 of the problem is from housing and buildings. 1/3 is transportation.
Yes.
So what has the provincial government done that you're aware of to change the building code that we can't go further than as a municipality?
The province is very, very slow at changing the building code. That's quite unfortunate. The federal government is changing it, but there's a process. The federal government has to make the change, as I understand it, and then the provinces have to agree to pick up and adopt that or not, that model building code, and then the municipalities. So it's unfortunately a delayed response. But I understand you have tools such as putting to the top of the approvals list permits for where green, people have gone above and beyond the building code, the outdated building code, to ensure that emissions are lower.
But is it not true that we cannot go beyond and enforce above the building code standards at a municipality at this point?
I have heard that, and I really suggest that the municipality has not tested those boundaries effectively.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. I'm going to ask staff. That would be the next question to staff, because I think...
Oh, yes, well, staff will always adhere to the...
So, okay, I thank you.
Thanks.
Question to staff, too.
Councillor Elgar, do you want to ask your question to staff now?
Yeah, I would like staff to clarify what we can and can't do regarding the building code right now, because we are building a few houses, I've noticed, in North Oakville, and what can we enforce?
On the enforcement side, and I'm sure Doug is on from legal perspective, but I know many times we have looked at this issue to see whether or not we could require anything further, and we cannot enforce a stronger level of requirements under the building code. Building code is a standard, and that is the only thing that we can enforce in terms of a building permit approval process.
So how would a municipality go about trying to get that changed at a provincial level?
Well, the chief building officials do provide comments into the province in terms of their changes. They do changes on a regular basis, at least every 5 years, if not more often lately. They have been making some changes, trying to move, I think the delegate responded to, move towards the federal standard, so that we have one standard throughout the Canada as a whole. So that has been going on. So the chief building officials provide comments into that, and they're quite active in that process. Council could also raise the issue to the province in terms of advocating for more changes within the building code or a faster pace to make those changes.
Okay, I got your idea. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And it actually segues from Councillor Elgar's questions just with regards to what we're doing from an advocacy role. And I guess, you know, getting 9 cents of every tax dollar that is spent in this country, it's often easy to look at the municipalities to go and enact change when the higher orders of government don't, whether it be provincial or federal government. And unfortunately, the burden financially often resides on the taxpayers. But while we cannot take that load and do what other levels of government should be doing, what are we doing from the advocacy side to make those changes and make those cases to the other higher levels of government who should be bringing in changes like building codes and subsidies and retrofit subsidies and these sorts of things? Or do we have an advocacy strategy on that?
We have, as I had said, through the chief building, through you, Madam Chair, we have actually, through the chief building officials, advocated for changes through the building code requirements. Certainly on the planning side too, we've looked to ways to implement some of the standards that are in the provincial documents now. They have a sustainability piece. We are putting together a sustainability paper for our OP, which will not only look at what changes we need to do in terms of our own official plan, but also how we can move those things and advocate them to other levels of government. So those would be 2 areas that I would identify that we're looking at. That's
great. And we'll be doing that this year and moving forward, we'll be continuing to advocate for that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I just looked, is there any other questions from the committee? No. I have one follow-up question, and that's just around education. So Director Clark, could I just ask you to clarify if there's any projects built into this year that is around educating the public further on the importance of their contribution to lowering emissions? So it's one component that came up from Mr. McKee about the fact that we're doing an awful lot on our side in terms of corporate, but there is an education piece that perhaps people are not embracing the sense of urgency that is needed around the reduction of carbon emissions. So is there anything in the work plan in that regard?
Not that jumps to mind immediately, but I would like to speak with our communications counterparts on that. We do have a website presence for this. We do plan for regular outreach and push out of messaging throughout the year. We have an annual, what I would refer to kind of as a promotions calendar that we do. But let me take that back, because there's a difference between promoting and educating. So I'll have to take that back.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being prepared for this morning. I appreciate it. Mr. McKee, just on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you very much for your advocacy and your passion, and hopefully you heard some things today that help you, give you some comfort, and of course we take all your comments and consideration. You were asked for a copy of your delegation, and if you could give that to the town clerk, that would be helpful. Thanks very much. Our next delegate is Doug Sams, the Executive Director for the Kerr Village BIA. Mr. Sams, welcome to the Budget Committee, and once again, congratulations on your OBA appointment.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I'm here to speak to the report that was brought forth from Transportation and Engineering, Planning Services, and Asset Management Department. Thank you for that report and the hard work that went into it. I'm here to support that report that was brought forth. Streetscape improvements in downtown Oakville, Kerr Village, and Bronte. Basically, I will speak specifically first to Kerr Village and also to the other areas just briefly, but I'm here to ask for two things. Of course, one is to grant the funding request of $400,000 for the one-time study. And I'm going to ask for one other thing, which I'll get to. It is important that we have continuity in design. Kerr Village is in need of a retrofit. It's a little bit old and getting worn, so the streetscape study for Kerr Village is very much welcomed. It will reinforce the character of Kerr Street, Bronny Road, and the vibrant commercial environments. Also included in that report within the streetscape study for Kerr Village, staff will examine opportunities and explore funding sources for seasonal lighting and decorative enhancements along Kerr Street and the Lake Shore, which we found the reason we kind of wanted that in there is for many years we had our tree lighting in the Heritage Square on Kerr Street, and we realized we're spending this money every year bringing in a tree, taking it out. So we asked Chris Mark if we couldn't plant a Christmas tree in Westwood Park, and we did. And now, we would like to decorate the streets and Lake Shore and up Kerr Street appropriately. So we're looking for a few more financial means to do that. Our growth areas are important and unique in their own right, and they provide continuity, common themes in our streetscape to project a strong Oakville identity. Vibrancy, vitality is an important component in Oakville and its economic development. And to that, it's an exciting time for us in Kerr Village because we're getting a lot of new businesses. And, to continue that trend to bring people to the area, not just Kerr Village, but downtown, Bronny, and other areas of Oakville, you kind of have to keep up with the streetscaping, make it welcoming, attractive. It's important for merchants that come in to feel the vibe, to have a chance at being successful, and it's important to the economic development. And one thing I like to say is the community is only as strong as the municipality, and the municipality is only as strong as the community. So I think revitalization projects are very important. They provide continuity and connections between Kerr and the other areas, and will provide streetscape and amenities expected in key commercial, cultural areas. And I highlighted some of those from the report, which I really appreciate. I appreciate our Ward 2 councilors. I know the motion was moved by Councilor Chisholm and seconded by Councilor Duddick. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate the Ward 1 and 3 councilors amending it and being on the motion as well. I think it's important to have that consensus. The other thing I want to ask for is I looked at the proposed timeline. And, since 2009, there have been economic and development reports on Kerr Village. Since 2009, in my view, 10 years is too long. We need to try to get this done in 5 or 6. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I want to thank you for your time, and I'm just here to support the motion and support the funding for the study.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. Councillor Duddick, do you have questions for the delegate?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Not so much questions, but comments. Doug, I know that the BIA has been asking for this for quite some time, and I know that Councillor Chisholm has been a strong advocate for it. The continuity that you make reference to, from what I recall, the continuity that the Kerr BIA is looking for is more than, well, let me just say, predominantly it's the Lakeshore corridor, because coming along Lakeshore going into downtown Oakville, from what I recall, there's a lot of people who seem to feel that the Kerr area is also associated with the downtown Oakville. And so when you refer to continuity, is that what you're referencing in terms of that branding or going forward on the Lakeshore corridor?
Through you, Madam Chair. Councilor Duddick, yes, to answer your question, we would like that continuity to start at the 16 Mile Creek bridge and go right down Lake Shore. And I know that's part of the configuration with continuing on down Lake Shore to Bronte, and also up Kerr Street to the railroad tracks. So, because there's a real difference in lighting and light poles, and quite frankly, our light poles are, some of them are starting to crack a little bit. So, yes,
like
that's, and we have talked about it a number of times. So, yes, to
Okay.
answer your question.
And I agree with your comment regarding the time frame. I think it's badly needed, and that time frame to me is not feasible. So thank you for raising that, and thank you, Councillor Chisholm, for your advocacy on this.
It has been talked about in many meetings, and and we've had Ray and I have talked a number of times, and so this is something we'd really like to see come to fruition.
I'm going to go to Councillor Adams next.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Nice to see you. I have a question on snow clearing in the BIAs,
Okay.
Which came up earlier. Can you tell me your opinion of the desirability of having enhanced snow clearing in the BIA areas? And can you tell me what your opinion is of its level of importance and whether the BIAs would support the funding of that, or where do you stand?
I really can't speak to other BIAs. I really haven't gotten any complaints on it, and that's kind of what our budget, our tax levy kind of can be used for a little bit. So I know out in front of my office, I get my snow shovel out and move it too, move the snow, but I really haven't had any complaints from landlords or tenants, so.
Thanks so much.
Councillor Chisholm?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to thank you, Doug, for coming this morning to make the presentation. I'm in full agreement with your comments, and the thing that and Councillor Dudek brought up too is with respect to continuity. Design of the project is people that come into Oakville don't disintegrate between downtown and Kerr Street. And the questions I've always asked is, well, why is it different? And I think it's time to understand and I hate to use the analogy here of get out of the box, but the reality of it is having continuity all the way from Allen Street to Maurice and Lakeshore up to Kerr Street in some type of continuity in design and product and whatever we need to do to make it look like a downtown Oakville. As far as I'm concerned, downtown Oakville includes Kerr, Lakeshore West, and downtown Oakville. So aside from that, Doug, I'm glad that you also brought up the point of let's get the shovels in the ground as quickly as possible. We'd like to be still on this earth as time it gets done. So I'm in full support of the reports to the Budget Committee. And again, I want to thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. And one thing that I've talked to Councillor Chisholm about in our board is we are kind of a, when you get to downtown, we're a big gateway to downtown. And, so it's like you want to leave a good first impression, right? And the new merchants that come in, we want them to be successful. We want to give them something to hang our hat on. So I think the study of the project and doing the project itself would go a long ways towards vibrancy and vitality for our businesses and them being able to economically survive. And I think it's important. It gives them something to hang their hat on.
Thank you. Councillor Adams, is your hand still up? Okay. Mr. Sams, thanks very much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Madam Clerk, are there any other registered delegations?
We have Pierre Savagon.
Mr. Savignon, you're welcome to come to the podium. We look forward to your comments.
Good morning, councillors and staff, as well as public members. Basically, I just want to address several items within the capital budget. Specifically, one of them is in regards to Fire Station number 9, which can be found on page 251 of the capital budget book. Just more questions that can be answered, if possible for staff to answer. Now, there is presently a temporary fire hall number 9, and basically I'm wondering about is the number of houses that are presently served by that fire station, as well as the number of calls that fire hall receives relative to the other fire halls within the town of Oakville. My personal opinion is you shouldn't put the cart before the horse. There needs to be a certain number of population, residents, houses within an area in order to justify opening up a new fire station. If we presently have a temporary one, which is functioning, and it still has a lifespan of X number of years, do we need to proceed to a new fire hall and spend over, say, 10 million in 2024 and 2 million in 2023? Personally, I think it needs to be a study to determine if it's sufficient population residents to justify opening up a new fire hall. Don't take me wrong, a fire hall may be needed in the future, but presently I don't think it is. That's why I want to ensure that staff crunch the numbers for me. I tried going to the Ontario Fire Marshal's office to obtain statistics. They gave me a site, but I'm having difficulty entering the site to determine the number of calls and everything. And I wish that staff can do that to see if we're justifying building it up, building a new fire station before it's time. Next, I want to address the master accommodation plan. It's basically for a hybrid office. I know there's approximately $3 million on the books for a capital project. It's on page 52. And I just wondered if staff can highlight, can it be delayed? And is there a plan to demolish town hall specifically? In the future, I heard there was going to be a relocation of the town hall to Midtown Oakville. So I'm wondering whether or not should we spend this money, or is there a plan in the near future for the town hall to move? What's the point of putting in money into an older facility when there is a plan, I believe, in the future to have a new town hall at Midtown? The third item which I want to address is the 16-mile sports complex and library. That's on page 269 of the capital budget. I know there's a master plan coming up soon in regards to parks, recreation, and library facilities. The old plan is dated, it's 2017, pardon me, and I believe it's every 5 years. So 2022, 2023, there should be a new one. It's the same logic of putting the cart before the horse. If we do not have a plan, and it states specifically as to the needs of the community, specifically, for instance, North Oakville, you're spending, supposedly allocated like $7.2 million in 2023 for a sports complex and library, which may not be needed at this moment. The old plan indicated that North Oakville complex, the needs won't be there until 2026 when it's more developed, more numbers in the community to justify such a plan of implementing a new building. So I wish that there'd be careful thought as to analyzing, well, do we need it right now in 2023 when we haven't had a new master plan to justify the numbers, et cetera? Next one is in regards to, the downtown cultural hub refresh. Now, I know a refresh is justified if there is a plan to implement the cultural hub in the near future. I understand that the theater will be looking to expanding the lobby space, et cetera, but the same logic of timing. I think this may be a little bit too soon, and it potentially could be delayed to the future. The reason why I'll explain a little bit later. So the question is the overall culture plan. I want to know when that will be in place, because there may not be a need to have that refresh until a year or whatever before to determine whether or not how we're going to configure everything in the cultural hub area. The next item is in regards to the IRCC pool and lobby renovation. That's found on page 281 of the budget book, capital budget, I should say. Just wondering if it can be phased in. I know the gentleman mentioned, oh, he's left right now, but in regards to improving the overall efficiency of the operation of the HVAC system, if it does go ahead, I want to ensure that we have the best available at the most efficient, effective, and economical cost, improving that ventilation system within the Iroquois Ridge Community Center. I know I was going to say harp on the fact that it could be delayed, but staff knows best in regards to the lifespan of that facility. So I cannot judge right now as to whether or not it's premature or not putting in the renovation. Next item is in regards to the Oakville Center lobby renovation. That's found on page 292. Now, I wonder if it can be delayed to a later year. I understand, if I'm correct, this is specifically for the expansion and renovation of the OCPA lobby space. I'm just wondering, from staff, will there be more than that for the 2024? There's over about $6 million being spent. What's the justification of doing all these renovations for an old facility when the town is contemplating of having a new cultural hub center? So you're spending all that money for it to be demolished later. I'm not sure whether it'll be incorporated into that new corporate cultural center area. That's important because you're throwing away $6 million if you're not doing so. Next item is in regards to Pine Glen Community Center Park renewal. Now, that's found on page 131, I believe, yes. It's in regards to replacement of the chain link fence around the 4 soccer fields. I'm a little surprised because in the budget itself, it says 2023, there's going to be approximately $400,000 spent. 2025, another $700,000. In 2026, another $200,000. Just clarification as to if that's all for fence replacement. I'm not too sure what that relates to. As well, in regards to the lifespan of those fence presently there, just wondering the lifespan, because I'm not too sure when Pine Glen was actually developed, the community center, the soccer fields, et cetera, how long the fence was supposed to last. I know it's a public fence, a private fence. An individual like myself would expect to last 20 years, so I'm not too sure of the lifespan of the facility. And lastly, I'm going to leave it at there because I want to address the operating budget in the next budget committee. So thank you very much. Any questions, I'll gladly help or can answer, or if staff can.
Thank you very much for all your hard work and diligence. You certainly went through the book with a good eye. Any questions from the committee for our delegate? Oh, Councillor Nanda?
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for coming out. I was just going to ask you in regards to some of the comments that you made, and I guess specifically for the fire hall and the 60 Mile Sports Complex. Have you yourself been up to North Oakville on that side?
Sorry, my hearing's...
Have you been up to Oakville on that side?
Oh, yeah, no, I go there. My mom's very into Republican law, so I visit there and I check out the facilities, everything. So I've been there several times, yes.
And then in terms of you suggesting that we may not have, like this may not be the proper time, what other feedback do you have in suggesting that it might not be the appropriate time to be putting funding into these projects?
Yeah, honestly, like for instance, if I lived in the community itself, I would demand, I want all these facilities. I pay my taxes, etc. But by the same token, you have to look overall as to the economy of the situation, the justification of having such a community center expand further when there isn't a need. I'm always saying that Oakville has a love affair with the car. I presume people can travel to other community centers as it is right now. Obviously, you would love to have it close within your community. But by the same token, you should be spending the money properly because there are many areas which I can suggest where funds should be spent. But this isn't my time to do so. I'm just pointing out the fact that the community center, based on previous master studies, it wasn't supposed to be put there until 2026 at the earliest. There is a plan for the community center, but justification of it being placed there right now may not be there. That's why I want to ensure that staff, for them to do the research, specifically the 2023-20 master plans coming out. So why put the cart before the horse? Logically, if you're planning something, you should take consideration what's to be done first.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Quite welcome.
If I could maybe ask staff just to maybe in discussing of educational pieces, maybe just a quick overview of why we're putting this in place. Maybe it'll give our delegate a little bit of a background, if that's okay.
Oh, I would appreciate that. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Nanda, great suggestion, and I see the commissioner in the room. I know she's understands the master plan quite well and the passion for 16 miles, so her comments may be helpful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 16 Mile Sports Complex project was based on the recommendations coming out of the 2017 master plan refresh, and we also looked at what was happening in the community in terms of growth and development. A number of our community centers in the northern part of Oakville are oversubscribed in a number of areas, and we've had complaints that they are overcrowded. So this brings the important point of moving this forward to address community need. The amount of feedback that we have got from the local area has been extraordinary. Many people are traveling to South Oakville, which they prefer not to do, and they would like to be able to walk to their community center. We found that when we put the temporary library in there, that we had a large number of residents who are actually walking to the facility. They have small children, and they want to actually use active transportation as a means of getting to a community center rather than getting in their car. There is a very strong green movement in the community towards active transportation as well. So we're very excited about the project. Council did see that there was a need and decided to accelerate the project. I believe that the community agrees, but as Pierre has rightly identified, we always embed in the master plan. We are undertaking a huge master plan upgrade or a refresh this year, but we do not anticipate that it will change the need for the community center. In fact, I think it's more likely to reinforce the need for the community center, particularly from a multi-generational standpoint.
Commissioner, thanks very much. And while we have you at the podium, can you just comment a little bit about Iroquois, this pool and renovation? Because I know you're passionate about making sure that when we do these renovations that they're energy efficient, but could you just comment on that comment that was made by the delegate?
So with respect to Iroquois, so for all of our community centers, we're in the process of doing a number of studies to ensure that our older facilities are improving in terms of energy efficiency through retrofits. One thing I did want to highlight is that we are very sensitive to disruption with respect to our retrofits from the standpoint of our patrons. So we try to bundle work together so that you don't have a situation where a facility is in a constant state of flux because there's a variety of projects that are going on and on. So we do try to look at that. When we look at our facilities as well, we do it from an asset management perspective. So all of our facilities are reviewed on an annual basis for condition assessments and to determine when would be the right time to actually do a retrofit. So it's not necessarily always based on age. It's a condition plays a key role.
So thank you for that. If you could just hold for a second. I see Councillor Adams' hands up, and do you have a question for the commissioner as well?
You know what, yeah, we kind of went down the road of, there were a bunch of projects that were named in this discussion, and many of them, I think, fall into the same kind of category, which is their asset renewal kind of projects. Not all of them are even related to the 2023 capital budget. Some of them are actually funding into future years, say 2024 or something. But it included a lot of the cultural the lobby space, for example, kind of falls in this category. The Pine Glen Park kind of falls into this category. And so, all the downtown cultural, not the big cultural refresh stuff, but the smaller pieces. The Iroquois Ridge falls into this category. So all of those things, and even the town hall renovation work falls into this category of updating what we have to keep it going, basically. Would you be able to speak to those other projects? I know the town hall one doesn't fall specifically into your category, perhaps, but certainly all the park and cultural stuff would.
So why don't I start with the Downtown Cultural Hub? So we have a amount of money in there so that we can start the work to look at what the needs assessment for our cultural facilities going forward. We are also going to be doing a refresh of the cultural plan from 5 years ago, and that will be sort of the overarching sort of master plan document that will inform what we're doing with our Downtown Cultural Hub. With respect to the actual specific project around the theater lobby, the theater lobby project is a placeholder right now. It's there in the event that, for whatever reason, council may substantially delay refreshing the theater because there are specific challenges to that lobby, and we would need to do a refresh. But at this point in time, that's on hold until we've done the bigger cultural plan and we've looked at the Downtown Cultural Hub in its entirety over the course of the next few months. So that's...
Can I stop you at that point right there? So that particular lobby reno project is not in our 2023 budget. It's in next year's budget. So whatever council decides about our budget currently, it's if we move that project out, it doesn't change anything that happens to the tax levy this year. It has no impact on what we're talking about in terms of the approval of this year's budget. So, I appreciate the discussion on it, but it's not going to change, what we're doing today.
That would be correct.
Right. Okay.
So
I'll let you keep going with the other.
So I'll continue on. Town Hall. So as I'd identified in my budget presentation earlier, many municipalities and private sector corporations have moved to hybrid model of service delivery where appropriate. So what we are looking at doing is instead of trying to find additional lease space as our staff grows, we're trying to look at ways to better utilize our existing space and be more economical in the way that we use our space. So as I had mentioned at the previous presentation, a part of that process is that we are going to be moving 2 teams back from Oakville Hydro. So that is a reduction of 6,000 square feet that the town would be currently occupying. And that's to also allow Oakville Hydro to take that space back because they are also growing in terms of their staff and they actually need us to leave. So that's a really important piece. In addition to that, when we do look at moving, which will happen at some point in time, we need to look at the most efficient floor plate that we can possibly put together. So by reducing the number of staff that are physically in our space at any one point in time, it allows us greater flexibility around our future buildings. With respect to the actual expense, we are going to minimize any physical changes that we need to make to this building. What we are trying to look at is more modular furniture, stuff that we can actually move with us to any new facility so it can be reused. So the technology, the furniture, any sort of elements like that would be reusable, and that they would be purchased with that specific idea in mind.
Thanks so much. And then on the town hall piece, since now we're on to that, we had a discussion, and maybe I'm speaking past you to the delegate, which was at the previous meeting, we did talk about delaying the town hall review study, which is, yes, we are eventually going to move out of this building, but the question as to where we move has to be determined still. That choice hasn't been made. So that's where that stands. So I hope that's helpful. And then the last thing I want to speak about really briefly, which is a couple of these big capital projects, the fire station and the sports complex, are being funded heavily through development charges. So all the dollars that are going into those projects are not property tax dollars directly. Some of them, there are some elements of it that are, but we collect development charges specifically to be able to have these facilities in our new communities, and not building them puts at risk our ability to have them in the future. And so, we got to get on with building our complete communities. So thanks very much. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I just have one follow-up, and then I'm going to go to the next committee member. In terms of the fire station and the analysis around the number of residents it services, et cetera, Councillor Adams makes a great point that it is DC-able, it is growth-related, it's anticipating. But just for the general public, can you just speak a little bit to the analysis that's done to determine that a new fire station is needed and needs to be planned for?
So I'm going to turn that over to our fire chief, who is very eager to speak.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell, and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, always eager to speak, and certainly Fire Station 9, of course, is a very important project for us. The design build is for 2023, and of course, the construction aspects are to take place in 2024, opening in 2025. I know that the delegation indicated that it was putting the cart ahead of the horse, but I wouldn't suggest that is necessarily the case. The Station 9 current location is a temporary station that was opened in 2014, which is essentially utilizing space from our roads and works department that has become a location for 9 years. The location for Station 9 was determined to be placed into the master fire plan in 2017. And what I can tell you based on numbers from 2017, our numbers from responses in that specific area in Station 9 for call volume of that station has gone from mid 500s to almost 900 in 5 years. So it's essentially doubled as far as call volume response. And the Station 9 location, what I can tell you is it is not by response numbers our, I dare say, slowest or lowest number response station of the 9 stations that we currently have. And we must remember as well that the reason why there likely wasn't anything found as far as target projectives on number of houses that a fire station serves, it's more encompassing geographic location. Because if that was the case, there might be some smaller municipalities with very low populations that would never have a fire hall if there was a matrix based upon numbers to open up a fire hall. The Station 9 location and the land that we've secured allows it to be a very clean response area with an 8-kilometer radius that meshes well with both or with the stations 8, 4, and 7 to ensure that we don't have major overlaps for those locations. But in a growing area like North Oakville, it allows us to have a response of 10 firefighters on scene in less than 10 minutes. That we continuously chase the NFPA standards for the response times to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the community, both from a residential as well as business impact, and that we also are in support of all the other stations. So as a primary response location, Station 9 has its own growth and development because of the community, but it also acts as a secondary response and or tertiary response for major call volumes in the north end as well. So major, vehicles, extrications, specialized rescues, structure fires in the northern end. It is often a support capacity as well as having a unique specialized vehicle that's housed at that location to service our trails, as well as dealing with grass fires and or wildland fires in the northern end for areas that are undeveloped. So it has a significant value. Ensuring that we have a proper station that is also being built with considerations for health and safety and carcinogens for firefighters is absolutely, a step in the right direction. And in the previous master fire plan, that was the reason why both Station 9 on a growth facet, and Councillor Adams hit the nail on the head with the DC allocations of being of great importance, but also Station 4 upgrade was also a temporary location in at one time and needing the replacement based upon the condition assessment that was previously done. So there's a whole lot of information there. I recognize the number of homes that it's servicing. What I can tell you is the call volume has doubled. I can certainly try and gain that information for the delegate as necessary and provide to council. Call volumes I have provided, but what I can tell you is that we don't want to be seen as maybe that school that ends up having to put up 7 portables because at the time of building, you're meeting the needs of a growing population, but then having to put in additional facilities to support. So we're building an appropriate facility that will last the test of time, built on the appropriate standards and meeting the needs of the community now and into the future in Station 9's response area.
Chief, you are a wealth of knowledge. Thank you very much for that education. I am going to go to Councillor Chisholm now, and I'm not sure, Commissioner, if you're off, get it to go off or not. Nope, right. Councillor Chisholm wants to ask your question.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity's sake, with respect to the comments made by the delegate with the horse before the cart and so forth, is it not within our 10-year capital forecast that we have analysis on a regular basis to move things back or move things forward based on the immediacy of a development because it breaks down? And I think that's the challenge you have, is that you're always looking at the balls and where they're going to be moved and so forth, because sometimes you hit the wall and then we're closing facilities and then we have no service delivery. And that is a real impact to the community. So as it stands with the 10-year forecast and our asset management and so forth, we do make moves accordingly to what the real-time environment is, and understanding that can change when reports come to council with respect to capital projects that need to be done, what might be the hub downtown and so forth. So we continue on with the business of what is in real time until such time things do change because of other situations. So just for clarity's sake, Commissioner, we do an analysis on our capital forecast on a regular basis.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, put a question in there.
We actually analyze our 10-year capital program on an annual basis because, as you have rightly identified, there are unexpected issues that arise at our facilities. So, for example, you'll have an HVAC system that suddenly breaks down that was completely unanticipated. And that does change what our service delivery might be, how we might manage programming going forward. So that's why we do it on an annual basis, because you're right, it is more in real time. And there's so many shifts and changes in the community right now that we want to make sure that we're as responsive and relevant in terms of our amenities as possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a question for the chief, if he's still there. There you are. Chief, can you make a comment about the temporary station number 9 and with respect to trucking water to fires in the northern community? Is there sort of progress in the sense of having additional, well, or actually building Fire Station 9, that this will improve the situation up there as well?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. So based upon the development growth in the north end of Oakville, there was contingency made for, as part of the fire underwriter survey, to ensure that we had the right amount of water should there be structure fires in the northern locations where areas weren't serviced yet through municipal water sources. So there was placement of what we would call pumper tankers that carry a specified amount of water beyond what a normal pump would carry. And certainly in stations 6, 8, and 9, we have capacity at this point right now for pumper tankers that would supply a water shuttle that meets the needs of the fire underwriters survey to ensure that we have enough onboard water in an immediate response for areas that were not able to deal with serviceable hydrants at specified locations. As we grow and continuously develop our infrastructure throughout the town, that lessens the capability or need for having to have pumper tankers should we need them. As another point that I do want to make, we are a part of a mutual aid plan that is a requirement through the Office of the Fire Marshal. I happen to serve as the I'm the fire coordinator for Halton Region for all 4 fire departments. So should there be a major structure fire in Milton or Halton Hills where they are needing water for serviceable areas that are not hydrant protected, we would also send one of our trucks to assist in their water shuttle relay to ensure they have a sustainable water source to combat major fires. So as the serviceable area at Station 9 is going to be part of the municipal grid and on the water grid in itself, the easy answer is yes. And the need for having pumper tankers into the future will lessen. We will be able to then look at replacement vehicles that are strictly pumpers, usually smaller, less heavy units that are easily used in an intensification type aspect for fire response. But make no mistake, with the growth that's happening in Station 9 area, we're also going to be looking and have forecasted into the future by way of the previous master plan, as well as the new plan that's coming out, is there will be more aerial device requirements necessary because of the growth and the high-rise components and larger building structures and everything that comes into play when we're doing the requirements. Legislatively, we have 4 mandates through legislation. We have needs assessments, we have a smoke alarm program, we have distribution of public education materials, and we have the requirement for inspections based upon request and complaint basis. But once you establish a fire hall, you maintaining that and ensuring that the risk assessment matches growth, intensification, services provided under your ENR bylaw, all of those facets come into play to make a strategic decision on the type of service that you want to supply. And that's what we continuously do, both through education and providing information to council, but also meeting the needs under our legislative requirements for both responses under NFPA as well as OFM requirements under our Fire Protection and Prevention Act.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Councillor Lischina. I have just 2 follow-up questions because we've answered most of the ones that the delegate brought forward. Just on the Pine Glen Park renewal, I'm not sure if you can speak to it or if you want Director Mark, but it is, I think there was a question around the cost of the renewal and maybe some confusion on the dollars.
I'm going to ask Director Mark to come up and speak, please.
Good morning, Budget Committee and Madam Chair. The money that's allocated for Pine Glen this year is for the perimeter fencing around the soccer fields. The fencing is in disrepair. It's about 20 years old now. Pine Glen was opened in 2003. The work involving the fencing also involves installing some higher fencing at the back of each soccer field. Pinegland is 4 soccer fields, and we've had issues with soccer balls going out onto Pinegland Road, as well as going into some rear yards on Weeping Willow Road. So the plan is also to extend that fencing higher to protect those properties. And as well, we've also had some issues with balls going back and forth between fields 1 and 4 and 2 and 3. So that's also part of that work as well.
Thank you for that. It looks like Councillor Adams has a question for you.
Not so much a question, but a comment of support. I've coached on those fields many times, and absolutely, balls are in the backyards of the residents on a pretty regular basis. And yeah, they're crossing from field to field, so you can end up having a ball in the back of the head, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you both for that information, and thank you, Director. My last question is to finance. So the delegate asked a lot of questions and obviously took the time to go through a lot of detail. How would he know, or how would the public know that, for example, the Oakville Centre Library is a placeholder? It is not necessarily going to proceed. Is that somehow identified in some way in our budget process?
To you, Chair Haslett-Deal. So I think actually Councillor Chisholm may have touched on that a little bit when he talked about our capital forecast. Any numbers that we have in our capital forecast are just that, they are a forecast. We do look at them each and every year to see where the right time is to do that project for both growth and infrastructure renewal projects. So anytime you see a number that's in there for a future year, we know the public can know that we will look at that as part of the next year's budget process. To understand the best time and the best amounts to go in there. And I'd also point to the master plans that are going forward this year that will also help guide us as we look at some of those major projects and initiatives that we'll be doing. So hopefully that's helpful for your question.
Just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thanks very much. Madam Clerk, are there any other delegations?
We have completed the delegations.
Okay, and I'll just look to the floor because I understand you can walk on to delegate at this committee meeting. You've already spoken, Mr. Savignon, so I apologize, but I have to.
Unfortunately, there's follow-up, right? So that's okay. Next budget meeting.
So thank you very much for your delegation. Thank you for allowing us to get out to the public some really good information that perhaps others didn't know as well. So we appreciate your time. So I'm going to look to the committee now. I need a motion to that the presentations from the delegations regarding the 2023 operating and capital budget be received. I have Councillor Elgar. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that is passed. We have no confidential items today, and so I just remind the public that you can register to delegate by noon on Thursday, February the 16th for our 6:30 p.m. public delegations, or and to register you send an email to townclerk@oakville.ca, or you are welcome to attend in person. We prefer you register to delegate, but you are welcome to attend in person and walk on. I'm going to just look to the committee. Is there any information or business I'm not aware of? Seeing none, I want to thank the staff and the committee for their time today, and I need a motion to adjourn. Okay, Councillor O'Meara, all those in favor? Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. We're adjourned.